He made sure of it. Can you help me? Can I stay with you tonight? The sheer audacity of her request almost made me laugh. After dragging my name through the mud, after believing a monster over her best friend, after turning a blind eye when he cornered me in our own kitchen, she wanted salvation. She wanted the old Stella back. I pulled a thick linen towel from the gold basket and slowly dried my hands, patting every finger with meticulous care. "Harper," I said, my voice as smooth and cold as the marble beneath our hands. She looked up, a pathetic spark of hope igniting in her dead eyes. I tossed the towel into the hamper and turned to face her fully. "Remember what I told you on the first night he came over? A man who protects what's his is rare. You should listen to him." The hope in her eyes instantly shattered, replaced by a profound, suffocating despair. She stepped back, her hand dropping to her side. "You chose him, Harper," I continued, my voice low and devoid of any sympathy. "You believed him when he said I assaulted him. You helped him push Sarah away. You handed him the keys to your life because you thought his control was love. Now, you have to live in the cage you helped him build. You're just going to leave me here," she whispered, her chest heaving with panic. "I already left," I replied, adjusting the lapels of my blazer. "Happy anniversary." I turned on my heel and walked out of the restroom, leaving her drowning in the opulent silence. Walking back to my table, my heart didn't race. There was no guilt, no lingering what-ifs. There was only the quiet satisfaction of a survivor who had finally learned to let the dead bury the dead. By the summer of 2024, Tristan was beginning to unravel. The thrill of the hunt was entirely gone. He had successfully isolated Harper from her friends, her family, and her education. She was a fully subjugated pet, which meant she was no longer a challenge. And for a narcissistic predator like Tristan, boredom breeds extreme volatility. His paranoia began to consume him. Because he had complete control over Harper, he started inventing imaginary threats to justify his aggression. And inevitably, his twisted mind circled back to the one person who had slipped through his fingers. Me. In my previous life, this was the period when my life imploded. Tristan had easily guessed my weak passwords, hacked into my email, and sent those career-ruining messages to Mr. Sterling. He had stalked my social media to find my new address and terrorized me. This time, I was a digital fortress. When I moved into my new apartment, I completely overhauled my cybersecurity. I switched all my vital communications to a secure Proton Mail account. I utilized Express VPN on all my devices, installed a heavy-duty firewall on my laptop, and secured every single login, from my bank to my LinkedIn, with a physical YubiKey. I scrubbed my new address from the internet and used a P.O. box for all my mail. I knew he was trying. In mid-June, I started getting multiple notifications on my phone. Failed login attempt. Suspicious activity detected. He was trying to breach my university portal, my old Gmail, even my Spotify account. Sitting in the safety of my Hawthorne building apartment, drinking a glass of iced tea, I watched the failed login alerts roll in with deep amusement. He was hitting a brick wall over and over again, and I knew exactly what that kind of impotent rage would do to him. He couldn't hurt me, so the backlash was going to land squarely on the only target he had left. The pressure cooker finally exploded on a sweltering Friday night in July. According to the police reports I would later read, Tristan had come home from a bar in a foul, drunken mood after failing to hack my social media yet again. He passed out on the sofa, leaving his unlocked iPhone face up on the coffee table. Harper, driven by the desperate, clawing intuition of a trapped animal, did something she hadn't dared to do in months. She picked up his phone. What she found wasn't just a betrayal. It was a complete demolition of the illusion she had sacrificed her life for. Tristan wasn't just talking to other women, he was actively maintaining a profile on Bumble. The app was full of active conversations. But the final nail in the coffin was a text thread with a girl named Jessica. Jessica, I thought you said you were single. My friend saw you with some skinny girl downtown. Tristan. Ugh, ignore that. That's just my pathetic roommate. She's obsessed with me and won't move out. I'm evicting her next month. Can't wait to see you tomorrow night, babe. He was already setting up his next victim, using the exact same playbook, the exact same lies he had used against me. Harper was nothing but an inconvenience he was preparing to discard. The confrontation that followed was catastrophic. When Tristan woke up and saw her holding his phone, the mask didn't just slip, it shattered. At 2:14 a.m., my phone buzzed on my nightstand. The caller ID was a blocked number, but the voicemails were transcribed automatically. I didn't wake up until the morning, but when I tapped the play button, the sheer terror in Harper's voice filled my quiet bedroom. Beep! Stella! Stella, please pick up! The background noise was chaotic. The sound of things breaking, a heavy thud, and Tristan's muffled, roaring voice. He's going to kill me. I saw his phone. He's cheating on me. He's talking to other girls. He said he's going to throw me out. Stella, he blocked the front door. He has my keys. Please, call the police. Please, I'm hiding in the bathroom. He's breaking the door. A loud, splintering crash echoed through the audio, followed by a guttural scream from Harper. Give me the damn phone, you crazy bitch, Tristan roared. The line went dead. I sat up in bed, the morning sun streaming warmly over my blankets. I listened to the voicemail a second time, analyzing the tone, the panic, the violence. In my past life, I would have been out the door in pajamas, driving recklessly across town to save her, ultimately driving right into the trap that ended my life. This time, I didn't rush. I didn't panic. I swung my legs out of bed, walked into my kitchen, and brewed a fresh cup of coffee. I let the aroma of roasted beans fill the air, grounding me in the present reality where I was safe, untouchable, and alive. I took a sip of my coffee, picked up my phone, and dialed the non-emergency police line for the district where they lived. Precinct 4, Officer Davis speaking. How can I help you? Yes, hello, I said, pitching my voice to sound mildly concerned but detached, like a responsible citizen reporting a minor nuisance. I'm calling to request a wellness check at 442 Elm Street, apartment 3B. I used to live there, and I just received a very disturbing, accidental voicemail from the current tenant, Harper. It sounded like a severe domestic disturbance. Lots of screaming and breaking glass. Understood, ma'am, Officer Davis replied, his tone shifting to professional urgency. We will dispatch a unit to that address immediately. Can you provide your name for the report? I'd prefer to remain anonymous, I replied smoothly. I just want to make sure no one is seriously hurt. The boyfriend's name is Tristan Hayes. He sounded highly intoxicated and violent. Thank you. Units are en route. I hung up the phone. I hadn't ignored her plea, but I hadn't played the hero either. I put the situation exactly where it belonged, in the hands of the law, creating a documented paper trail of his violence, without ever putting myself in his line of sight. I exported the voicemail file, backing it up to my cloud storage alongside the recording of him harassing me in the kitchen. The evidence of his monstrosity was mounting, and the walls of his little kingdom were finally crumbling. He thought he was the ultimate predator, but he was about to learn what happens when the prey you discarded decides to become the architect of your downfall. The call came precisely at 9:15 a.m. the following morning. I was at my desk at Apex Marketing, reviewing a quarterly projection report, when my phone vibrated with an unknown number. I let it ring twice before answering, keeping my voice perfectly professional. "This is Stella, Ms. Stella Adams." The voice on the other end was gruff, exhausted, and unmistakably authoritative. "This is Detective Bradley Smith from the 12th Precinct. I'm calling regarding an incident at your former residence on Elm Street. I understand you used to room with a Ms. Harper Lewis." "Yes, Detective," I replied, leaning back in my ergonomic chair and gazing out the floor-to-ceiling windows at the city skyline. "I moved out several months ago. Is everything all right?" "There was a domestic violence call last night," Detective Smith stated flatly. "A severe one. Ms. Lewis is currently in the ICU at St. Jude's Medical Center. Her jaw is wired shut, and she has a fractured orbital bone alongside multiple defensive lacerations. Tristan Hayes is in custody. We found your name on the old lease agreement and in her phone's emergency contacts, though you were blocked. Given the severity of the situation, we're trying to piece together a timeline of Mr. Hayes's behavior. Would you be willing to come down to the station to answer a few questions? A fractured orbital bone. A wired jaw. The karma was brutal, heavy, and exacted a much higher toll than I had even anticipated. A flicker of something cold and absolute settled in my chest. "I don't need to come down to the station, Detective," I said smoothly, opening a secure, encrypted folder on my desktop. "I have everything you need right here. I'm emailing you a secure link. It contains 2 audio files. One is a voicemail from last night that I assume prompted the neighbors to finally call 911, though I also called in a wellness check myself. The other is a recording from 8 months ago, proving a clear pattern of predatory behavior and physical intimidation by Mr. Hayes." There was a heavy pause on the line. "You recorded him?" "I'm a very cautious person, Detective Smith. Let me know if you need anything else." I hung up, forwarded the files, and went back to my spreadsheets. I didn't rush to the hospital. I didn't send flowers. I let the weekend pass in absolute tranquility. It wasn't until Tuesday evening that I decided to make an appearance at St. Jude's Medical Center. I didn't go for Harper's sake. I went for mine. I needed to look the monster of my past life in the eye and confirm it was finally dead. Room 412 smelled of strong antiseptic and dying lilies. Ironic, considering the flowers Tristan had brought on their first dinner. Harper's mother, Mrs. Lewis, was sitting in a plastic chair by the bed. When I walked in, she stood up, her face a mask of grief and misplaced anger. This was the same woman who, in my past life, had told me to stop interfering in Harper's perfect relationship. "Stella," Mrs. Lewis breathed, wiping her eyes. "You came." I nodded politely but kept my distance. "How is she?" "Broken," her mother sobbed, gesturing to the bed. Harper looked incredibly small. Her face was a patchwork of purple, black, and sickly yellow. A metal brace held her jaw in place, and her left eye was completely swollen shut beneath a thick layer of gauze. When her one good eye fluttered open and landed on me, A fresh wave of tears spilled over her battered cheeks. She couldn't speak, but the desperation in her gaze was deafening. She was begging for absolution. "The police said you sent them audio files," Mrs. Lewis whispered, her tone shifting to something defensive. "Stella, if you knew he was this dangerous, why didn't you warn us? Why did you just abandon her?" I turned my gaze slowly from the bed to Mrs. Lewis. The audacity was truly generational. "Warn you?" I asked, my voice barely above a whisper, yet it cut through the room like a scalpel. "Mrs. Lewis, the night I moved out, Harper stood in our hallway and watched Tristan corner me. She watched him lie, and she chose to believe him because it was easier than facing the truth. She pushed away every single friend she had. If I had come to you 6 months ago and told you Tristan was a monster, what would you have done?" Mrs. Lewis opened her mouth, then snapped it shut, her face flushing with pale guilt. She knew exactly what she would have done. She would have called me a jealous liar, just like Harper did. "I didn't abandon her," I said, looking back down at Harper, whose tears were now soaking into the stark white hospital pillow. "I just stopped standing in front of the bullet she was determined to catch. You made your bed, Harper. I just hope you survive the process of making it out of it." I didn't wait for a response. I turned on my heel and walked out of room 412, the rhythmic beep of the heart monitor fading into the background of my new, beautifully unburdened life. Tristan's family was wealthy, which meant he wasn't going to go down without a spectacular, dirty fight. They hired Richard Montgomery, a high-profile defense attorney known for victim blaming and destroying witnesses on the stand. Tristan's defense strategy was sickeningly predictable. He pleaded not guilty to aggravated assault and false imprisonment. His narrative: Harper was mentally unstable, deeply insecure, and had attacked him in a jealous rage after finding out he was talking to other women. He claimed his actions were pure self-defense, a tragic accident that occurred while trying to subdue a hysterical partner. Because of the audio files I had submitted, Montgomery subpoenaed me. He thought I was a weak link. He thought he could paint me as the bitter, jealous former roommate who had a vendetta against his client. The trial began in late November, almost exactly 3 years after the date I had died in my previous life. Walking into the courtroom of Judge Arthur Belmont, I felt a profound sense of destiny. I was wearing a tailored charcoal suit, my hair pulled back in a sleek chignon. I looked like a woman who dealt in facts, not emotions. Tristan was sitting at the defense table. He was wearing a navy suit, his hair neatly combed. When I walked down the aisle, he turned and looked at me. He offered a slight, arrogant smirk, a silent promise that he was going to humiliate me on the stand. I didn't break eye contact. I just stared at him with the dead, blank expression of an executioner. When Assistant District Attorney Caroline Davis called me to the stand, the courtroom fell silent. A DA Davis was sharp, methodical, and knew exactly how to use my evidence. After establishing my identity and my previous living arrangement, she got straight to the point. "Ms. Adams, the defense has suggested that Harper Lewis was a volatile, controlling partner who frequently initiated physical altercations. During your time living with them, did you ever witness this?" "No," I answered clearly, speaking directly into the microphone. "I witnessed the exact opposite. I witnessed Tristan Hayes systematically isolate Harper from her friends, police her schedule, and verbally berate her until she was a shell of herself." Richard Montgomery shot up from his chair. "Objection, speculation and character assassination." Overruled, Judge Belmont grunted. The witness is describing her direct observations. Proceed. ADA Davis walked toward the jury box. Ms. Adams, can you tell us about the incident on November 12th, 2023? I recounted the evening in the kitchen perfectly. I described Tristan's approach, his smell, his exact words. Montgomery objected twice, trying to rattle me, but my heart rate never even spiked. And did you record this interaction? A DA Davis asked. I did. I had a shortcut on my phone. I began recording the moment he trapped me against the counter because I knew he was going to try something and I knew he would lie about it. A DA Davis played the first audio file. The courtroom listened in absolute, horrified silence as Tristan's predatory, raspy voice echoed off the wood-panelled walls. You always smell so good, Stella. Harper's an idiot. She's clinging to me like a parasite. You want to show me what a real woman is like? And then, the unmistakable sound of a physical struggle, my demand for him to let go of my wrist, and his immediate, terrifying pivot into playing the victim the second Harper opened the door. I looked over at the defense table. Tristan's smirk had vanished. His face was stark white, his jaw clenched so tight I thought his teeth might shatter. But the real killing blow wasn't the kitchen recording. It was the twist I had orchestrated behind the scenes with ADA Davis. When it was Montgomery's turn to cross-examine me, he approached the podium looking like a cornered snake. Ms. Adams, isn't it true you're just a vindictive woman? You recorded my client without his consent because you were obsessed with destroying his relationship, correct? I recorded him for my own safety, I replied evenly. And it seems my caution was justified. You submitted a second audio file to the police, Montgomery sneered. A voicemail from the night of the incident. You claim you were just checking your messages. But isn't it true you called the police anonymously because you wanted to frame my client for a fight Harper started? I called the police because Harper was screaming that he was going to kill her, and then the line went dead, I stated. Ah, yes, the voicemail. Montgomery turned to the jury. A voicemail where we hear a struggle, but we don't see who started it. For all we know, Harper threw the first punch. I leaned forward slightly into the microphone. You're right, Mr. Montgomery. The voicemail doesn't show who started it, but the hidden camera did. A collective gasp rippled through the gallery. Montgomery froze, his face dropping. Objection, he stammered loudly. What camera? There is no camera in evidence. A DA. Davis stood up, a triumphant smile playing on her lips. Your Honor, the prosecution submitted a supplemental discovery packet yesterday afternoon. Following Ms. Adams's initial tip to the police regarding Mr. Hayes's controlling behavior, investigators obtained a secondary warrant to sweep the apartment for surveillance devices. They found a hidden nanny cam inside the smoke detector in the living room, purchased and installed by the defendant, Tristan Hayes, to spy on his girlfriend. Tristan vaulted out of his chair clattering to the floor. You bitch, he screamed, lunging toward the witness stand. Two bailiffs tackled him before he even made it past the defense table, slamming him face first into the hardwood floor. The courtroom erupted into chaos. Judge Belmont was slamming his gavel, demanding order, while Tristan thrashed violently, screaming obscenities at me. I didn't flinch. I sat perfectly still, looking down at him as his hands were wrenched behind his back and cuffed. The hidden camera he had installed to terrorize and control Harper had captured the entire, unprovoked beating in stunning high-definition night vision. He had literally recorded his own demise. Checkmate. Justice arrived with the swift, crushing weight of a falling guillotine. Faced with the undeniable, high-definition video evidence of his own unprovoked brutality, captured on the very surveillance equipment he bought to terrorize his girlfriend, Tristan's self-defense plea evaporated into thin air. His expensive defense attorney, Richard Montgomery, practically deflated at the defense table, packing away his legal pads before the jury even returned from their astonishingly brief 2.5-hour deliberation. Sitting in the gallery, watching the jury foreperson stand and read the verdicts, a profound stillness settled over my soul. Guilty of aggravated assault, guilty of false imprisonment, guilty of illegal wiretapping. With every guilty that echoed through the silent wood-panelled room, another piece of the heavy, traumatic armour I had been wearing since my rebirth fell away. Judge Arthur Belmont did not hold back during sentencing. He stared down at Tristan from the bench with unmasked disgust. "Mr. Hayes, you are a textbook predator with zero capacity for remorse," Belmont's voice boomed, silencing the faint, desperate sobs of Tristan's wealthy mother in the front row. "You weaponized your partner's love, isolated her, and when she finally discovered your infidelity, you nearly beat her to death, and you had the audacity to try and use this court to paint her as the aggressor." Belmont paused, his gaze hardening. 15 years in a state penitentiary, no possibility of early parole. Bailiffs flanked Tristan immediately. The arrogant smirk that had defined his entire existence was completely gone, replaced by the pale, wide-eyed terror of a coward who suddenly realized his money and manipulation were useless. He thrashed slightly as the heavy metal cuffs ratcheted around his wrists. As they dragged him towards the side door, his eyes frantically searched the gallery until they locked onto mine. He looked pathetic. A hollow, broken little boy facing the reality of a cage he couldn't charm his way out of. I didn't smile. I didn't gloat. I simply held his gaze with the dead, blank expression of an executioner watching the trap door swing open. He broke eye contact first, his head dropping as he disappeared into the holding area. Stepping out of the stifling courthouse and into the crisp, biting December air felt like drawing my first real breath in 2 lifetimes. The sky above the city was a brilliant, cloudless blue. I paused at the bottom of the wide concrete steps, pulling my tailored wool coat tighter against the winter chill, ready to walk away forever. "Stella, wait." Pausing mid-step, I slowly turned. Standing near a massive stone pillar, leaning heavily on a prescribed medical cane, was Harper. She looked marginally better than she had during my brief hospital visit, but the damage was permanent. The swelling had receded, leaving behind a jagged, livid scar that cut through her left eyebrow and down to her cheekbone. She moved with the agonizing fragility of spun glass. Her mother stood a few feet behind her, eyes cast downward in shame, refusing to look at me. "Harper," I acknowledged, my tone polite but utterly devoid of warmth or familiarity. She took a slow, trembling step toward me, the rubber tip of her cane scraping against the concrete. I just wanted to say thank you. Assistant District Attorney Davis told me about the camera. She said if you hadn't tipped off the police about his spying habits and the hidden devices, they never would have swept the apartment. They never would have found the footage. He would have gotten away with it, Stella. Harper looked at me with those big, tear-filled eyes, desperate for a moment of connection. Desperate for the old Stella to emerge. She wanted me to close the distance, to hug her, to tell her that we were survivors and that we could heal together. She wanted the comfort of the friendship she had so easily thrown away. "Do you remember freshman year?" Harper whispered, her voice cracking as a desperate plea. "When we stayed up all night eating cheap pizza and promising we'd always protect each other. I know I broke that promise. I know I was stupid and blind. But I'm so sorry." Looking at the scar on her face, my mind didn't flash to our freshman year. It flashed to the blinding headlights of Tristan's truck in my past life. It flashed to the crushing impact of metal, the shattering of glass, and the metallic taste of my own blood drowning my lungs while she sat safely in his passenger seat, believing his lies. "Don't thank me, Harper," I said quietly, the icy finality in my voice stopping her dead in her tracks. "And don't mistake my actions for salvation. I didn't tell the police about the camera to save you." Harper flinched as if I had struck her. Her lower lip trembled violently. "Then, why?" "I told them because I wanted to ensure he rotted in a concrete cell for the rest of his youth," I replied, my face a perfect, unreadable mask. "You were simply the collateral damage that proved my point to the jury." Tears finally spilled over her scarred cheeks, freezing in the winter air. "Stella, please, I have nothing left. He took all my savings. I had to drop out of my program. I'm moving back to Ohio with my parents tomorrow. I'm begging you. Please forgive me." "I accept your apology," I said smoothly, offering absolutely no comfort. "But an apology doesn't rewind time. It doesn't erase the choices you made when you were perfectly willing to let him destroy my reputation and my life just to protect your twisted fantasy. You have to live with your scars, Harper, and I am going to live my life." Turning away from her for the absolute final time, I walked down the busy street toward the subway station. The rhythmic click of my heels against the pavement was strong, steady, and purposeful. I didn't look back. Not once. 3 years later, the dingy apartment on Elm Street feels like a nightmare that happened to someone else. I was recently promoted to Senior Director at Apex Marketing, working directly under Mr. Sterling. I purchased a beautiful, sun-drenched condo overlooking the river, far away from the college crowds and the ghosts of my first life. I travel frequently, spending weeks in Italy and Greece, and I surround myself only with people who earn my trust through actions, not empty words. Karma isn't just a mystical force that balances the scales of the universe while you wait patiently on the sidelines. Sometimes karma is a conscious, calculated decision. Sometimes karma is simply refusing to jump back into the fire to save someone who is happily holding the match. I was violently handed a second chance at existence, and I refused to waste a single second of it playing the martyr. I chose to be the ruthless architect of my own survival, and in the end, all I had to do was step back and watch coldly as the monsters of my past eagerly dragged each other down into hell. That's my story. It's dark, it's brutal, but it is the absolute truth of what happens when you prioritize your own peace over someone else's toxic choices. Sometimes the bravest thing you can do is walk away and let the villain destroy themselves. If you made it this far, and you agree that Stella did the right thing by refusing to be a victim twice, smash that like button right now. Have you ever had to cut off a toxic friend who wouldn't listen to reason? Tell me your survival stories down in the comments. I read every single one. Don't forget to share this video with anyone who needs a harsh reality check about controlling relationships, and hit that subscribe button with the notification bell turned on so you never miss a dose of real-life karma. See you in the next one.